Hello, everybody. Hi, Arman, Thomas.
Hello, Dan.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
So we can then start. I think it's everybody's ready. Dear Internal Audit Community of Practice of PEMPAL members, our dear observers and guests, thank you for connecting to Smart Interactive Talk. This is our third Smart Interactive Talk with the topic of internal audit and internal control framework with focus on the Swiss experience. And today we're going to learn from our Swiss counterparts on their system of internal audit and internal control, as there was a major interest in this topic. I'm very pleased that today we have Ben Boyce with us. We joined 7 a.m. morning and the first time from DC, just to welcome us. Dan, as majority of you know, is a practice manager for ECA East at the World Bank Governance Global Practice. And just good to know that yesterday we just learned that Dan got an award from the World Bank Staff Association for being the greatest, the greatest manager and leader in the World Bank for the last year. So that also demonstrates his commitment and his leadership to the World Bank, to our practice, but also to the PEMPAL. Dan, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours for opening remarks.
Thank you, Arman. And hello, everyone. Wasn't too long ago that we were in the last SIT. I'm pleased to welcome all the participants from the 23 PEMPAL countries and also many observers from ECA and also from other regions. This is the PEMPAL Internal Audit Community of Practice and Swiss Secretariat for Economic Affairs Smart Interactive Talk. This event is jointly organized with the kind support from SECO and virtually hosted by the Court of Auditors from the Canton of Bern, Switzerland. The PEMPAL, IACOP, and SECO organized this event to explore the Swiss approach to the implementation of public sector internal audit and internal control frameworks. The event was initially planned as a face-to-face event, and it was going to be between the PEMPAL Cross COP leadership and executive committee members. Following the pandemic, it was switched to virtual format, and in parallel, this format also provides a good opportunity for more countries and professionals to benefit from knowledge shared by Swiss experts. Just like to check, am I being heard? I have a problem here with my video. Yes. Okay. Very good. It's important, I think, that the PEMPAL IACOP members learn from this Swiss experience. We look forward to hearing from the speakers who will share their insights on the public sector internal audit and internal control frameworks implementation in the Canton of Bern. We all wish we could have been in Bern. At least we were planning to be there next week, but we all look forward to having another opportunity. Switzerland has an advanced and specific model, which will be interesting for many countries. This topic today will focus on the organization of internal control framework and internal audit activity, the external audit, and the collaboration between the internal and external audit, also the internal audit quality assessment, performance audit, KPIs, and many other topics. To conclude, I'd like to express my appreciation again for SECO as our standing PEMPAL partner, and specifically to Thomas Stauffer for the efforts in organizing this professional virtual study visit, as we're calling it. It's a rich agenda, I think, that you're covering today, with many thanks to the speakers for their contributions that they'll make in the event. I think you'll find that today's knowledge sharing covers the full range of this core function of internal audit, which can help during the current crisis and beyond as a good example in many areas for other countries to emulate. With that, I wish you all a great discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan, for welcoming remarks, and thank you for noting SECO, as SECO has been our key partner and donor of our PEMPAL program. And thanks to SECO, we have, and also our other donors, Russian Federation, as well as potentially European Union, we expect just to extend and our successful program. And that is very good point then, that behind SECO, that is Thomas Taffer, who was their key leader, and PEMPAL steering committee member who contributed to our program and also helped to make this virtual event happen. So Thomas Taffer is a program manager for macroeconomic support in Eastern Europe, and also a global leader for SECO support to central banks and statistics. He has more than 15 years experience in economic policy and administration, including in the area like anti-corruption and civil service reform. Thomas' most recent assignment was the head of the Swiss Contribution Office to Romania. And Thomas is PhD in social sciences as well as Master of Arts in law from University of St. Gallen. So he continued to teach nowadays. Thomas, thank you for organizing this event, and I'm very pleased to pass the floor to you for opening.
Thank you, Arman. And good afternoon for me, good afternoon to others, good morning to everybody. On behalf of SECO, I'm very happy to be able to join today for this virtual event. I'd like also to thank Dan for joining us today and to congratulate him for the recognition by the staff of the World Bank. I think that's a great thing. Now, of course, I would have liked to see you all in Bern this summer, but we all know why this hasn't been possible. So we're doing the second best thing, and I'm looking forward to catch up with you next year in Bern. I'd like to thank Arman and Luzin and the whole PEMPAL team for organizing this virtual event, and of course also for inviting me. But my special thanks go to Thomas and Mark of the Court of Auditors of the Canton of Bern. I think it's the Court of Auditors of the Canton of Bern is a very interesting case, and in many ways a leader in audit in Switzerland. And I'm looking forward to them sharing their experiences. As you know, Switzerland, through SECO, supports PEMPAL since 2007 from its inception. And I can say that for us, the peer learning in PEMPAL has been a success story. This has become very evident again during the recent, or perhaps I should say the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, a situation where new problems arise and new solutions have to be found quick. The value of peer learning has become very apparent for us, not only in the PEMPAL network, but also in other contexts. So I'm looking forward to the presentation and even more so to the discussion. And I wish you an excellent event and a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for nice wishes, and thank you for your personal contribution. So now I would like just to pass the floor to our two distinguished speakers, Thomas Remond, who is the head of the Court of Audit of Canton of Bern. He has been leading that position since 2010, and prior to that, 15 years he has experience in banking and 10 extra years in the private auditing in Big Four firm. He also 10 years has experience in finance and controlling function with the Swiss Railway. And then we will hear from another distinguished speaker, which is Mark Butcher, who is the head of the Special Examination Department at the Court of Audit of Canton of Bern. And Mark brings 7 years of experience in accounting with Swiss Railway prior to that, and 7 years of the private auditing experience with Big Four. So both our speakers have extensive experience and quite relevant to our today's topic. So I'm very pleased to pass the floor to Thomas for presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Arman. Good day to everybody. We are glad to have your presentation of the subject of internal audit. Unfortunately, you are not here with us in Switzerland because of Corona, we heard it about, but nevertheless, we hope to see you once a time in Switzerland. I don't know if you see the chart now already. No?
Just a second, it will appear.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then the next slide, please. Okay, here you see our agenda. For you, I think it's important to know that we won't to teach you. We will just show you the way as we are doing our job in Switzerland. Our methods and process are fitting to our needs, our environment, our laws and constitution. Of course, each of you have other requirements, other laws in your country, and so it's up to you if it's helpful or useful for you or not. Next slide. And the next slide. All you have to know about me and Mark, Armand told you already. So I think we go on chart 5, number 2, Switzerland. Next chart, yes. After the introduction of ourselves, we would like to give you a short overview of Switzerland. We are looking forward to welcome you one day in Switzerland. We get during the last weeks already from SECO, from Thomas Stauffer, about a lot of information about Switzerland. So for you, I think you read them. It's just a short fresh up. Next slide. This slide shows you some figures about the Confederation and give you an overview of the cantons in Switzerland. Switzerland has a surface of about 41,000 square kilometers. Today, Switzerland counts 9 million citizens. The most populated cantons or states are Zurich and Bern. Our beautiful small country is divided into 26 cantons, each of them with its own originality and autonomy in certain domains. Next slide. Let's now look which shows you the similar structures between confederation, the canton or states, and the cities. 3 political levels share power in Switzerland. The confederation, on the second level, 26 cantons and over 2,000 communes and cities. Right on the top, we have the population. In the executive, we have 7 federal councils and 7 state councils. 160 persons are in the legislative in the Canton of Bern. The judiciary is fully independent from the executive. On every political level, meaning federal, cantonal, and city, we have independent auditors. Close cooperation between them is highly important. Nevertheless, there is still risk exposure in terms of unclarity and responsibility among the political levels. Next slide. In Switzerland, we have a direct democracy. The citizens vote the politicians and government every 4 years on all 3 political levels. In addition, we can or should vote on various important issues at all levels. Generally, we go to polls to vote 2 to 4 weekends per year. Normally, votes are written. However, in small cantons and towns, as in the photo, votes are given by raising their hands. Next slide. The Canton of Bern has 1 million inhabitants and a budget of about 12 billion Swiss francs. The euro and the Swiss franc are nearly on par. Our canton is bilingual. Most speak German, and a small minority of about 5% speak French. Next slide. Where is the position of the auditing department of the Canton of Bern? I think you will be not surprised to see that we are independent of the government, the administration, and the finance, as well the control committees. Our audit department is independent, and in our audit activity is only bound by the Constitution and the law. As head of the department, I have been chosen by the government for a period of 4 years. The election must be confirmed by Parliament. The next slide, please. What are the main tasks of the audit department? First of all, it's about internal audit. We conduct audit engagements for more than 300 different departments of the Canton of Bern. Furthermore, we are also external auditor for the financial statement of the canton. This dual charge isn't allowed in the private economy, but it is common in the public sector of Switzerland. Another important task is auditing the subsidy of about 4 billion Swiss francs, which the canton contributes to institutions. Next slide. On this slide, you can see our organization. Altogether, we are 24 full-time equivalent. The financial audit team is the biggest department with about 15 employees. Then we have 3 information system auditors and 2 constructions auditors. In addition, we have also a legal department. Next slide, thank you. The independence of auditor is essential for the success of an audit engagement. Only when this is ensured can individual institutions be effective. The duties and powers of financial control are indeed regulated by law. Nevertheless, disputes are found in Switzerland between the government and the Court of Auditors. Laws are interpreted as one thing and practiced as another. Due to the support of Parliament and sometimes the press, it works out in Switzerland. Next slide. Here you see the communication between the audit department and the control department, the ministries and the government. Communication between the court is very important. Key findings are reported to the government and the committees if they are material. Thus, the pressure on the government increases to implement the required measures. That means the risk that problems land under the table decreases. The communication must be appropriate for the addressee. For example, no technical language, keep it as simple as possible. Next slide. The 3 line of defense model prevent for failure. The first line of defense covers the operative controls. The second line of defense is compliance and supervision by management. And the third line focused on the audit and committee oversight. Next slide. In my point of view, law and regulation belongs to hard skills. Without this base, nothing works. However, the law and regulation do not guarantee long adherence, but they are prerequisite to prevent injustice and corruption. Clear guidelines are then needed regarding processes, system, segregation of duties, and an effective internal control system. But this setup only works out when the culture of an entity or institute is willing to change and improve. If this is not the case, the best internal control system is ineffective. Next slide. Regarding soft skills, I count among others as written code of ethic, which is well known to employees. Next, the company culture, which is based on trust, openness, allows errors to be discussed and solved. The way management behaves as a role model to their employees is a central point. Staff need courage and social competence to report abuses and errors. Next slide. It is not easy to be a servant of two masters and to keep them both happy. The government and committees have different tasks, responsibilities, as well they belong to different parties. Therefore, the expectation of the Court of Auditors are also different. It is also an advantage when at least either the Parliament or the government fully support the Court of Auditors. Next slide. In ancient times, often the bearer of bad news was punished. To this day, the feeling is the same. Without auditors, there is no problem, meaning the problem is sometimes the auditor. Fortunately, today, sanctions are only verbal. Next slide. In this sense, a known or unknown problem often becomes an issue when it lands on the table. The re-election and reputation are often seen as more important than solving a problem. This is not per se a bad thing. It simply belongs to the general setup of politics. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil are thus quite a natural part of politicians' repertoire and in accordance with the public administration. For the Audit Court of the Canton of Bern, it is essential to have the support from the relevant committee and councils for addressing problems and findings. If there is a change culture in place and the council is willing to do things better and the right way, the canton improve. Next slide. As I told you, without the support and trust of the government and the parliament, problems cannot be improved. If an auditor does not receive support for his findings, he risks losing his job, or he will only audit where there are no issues. This way, the auditor can stay in bed or lay on the beach. The effect is the same. In such a system, the citizens and taxpayer will lose trust in the state. The consequence follows that the citizens also become corrupt and the circle closes. Next slide. It is already enough when finance and control committees support the auditor, but of course, it's even better if the government is open to finding a solution. When the press publish their findings and everybody is on the same page, then they will want to solve the problem immediately. In this case, the freedom of press is very important. Unfortunately, the problems cannot simply be swept under the rug. In fact, the opposite is true. They will grow and become more critical. There is no way around. Soon or later, these issues must be handled. So I give now the speech to Mark.
Yeah, hello everybody from my side. I hope you can hear me. I will now speak about the specific work in our Court of Audit in the Canton Bern. So let's see about the control area. We only are responsible for the auditing of the administration of the Canton Bern. This is our main focus. And as well, we do audit the university or the both University of Bern. We have two universities in the Canton of Bern. And on the other side, we audit some organizations that carry out some public tasks, so like private-public partnerships, and which receive funds or subsidies to fulfill those tasks. Occasionally, we also audit some independent entities. Almost always do they have a relation to the Bern administration, to the administration of the Canton Bern. Next slide, please. Let's have a look on our administration in the Canton of Bern. We have 7 ministries, for example, the Ministry of Police or the Ministry of Social Security or the Ministry of Construction and so on. Within those 7 ministries, we have around 60 departments. Beside that, we have an independent court condensed in the Ministry of Justice. Our Court of Audit is independent as well as the justice. All of those are in the subject of audit, except ourselves, of course, for internal and for external audit purposes. This is probably one of the main differences to many other countries where, as we know, the auditors, the external auditors are a private firm in Switzerland on the administration level. Usually all auditors, internal and external auditors, are also employed by the administration itself, but as much independent as possible. We will see that further. The Court of Auditors has an oversight committee, which itself employs an audit firm to audit the Court of Audit each year. They do a firm review as well as assess the own financial statements of the Court of Audit. Next slide, please. As I told already, we do external audit as well as internal audit. Around 1/4 or 25% of our resources is reserved for the year-end audit. And this means the external audit. We also do a hard close in November or December to be early enough that the government can present their financial statements in February or in March. The rest of our resources are for the internal audit. We do about 70 to 80 single audits of the departments. Some large departments are audited more than once a year, and some smaller only every other year. Then we do about 20 audits of construction projects. As you know, they are very expensive usually, and the efficiency of the construction is always on the task we audit, and of course also the safety of the constructions and so on. Very important, and even getting more important, are ITC audits. All the systems are supported by sophisticated IT systems, so we have to check them as well. As Thomas told you before, about 4 billion of Swiss francs are contributed to subsidies each year in the Canton of Bern. So we do also audit those subsidies to check that the money who is granted or borrowed is well effective and well efficiency. Next slide. For the external audit, we applied the international standards of auditing. In Switzerland, we have a known implementation, the Swiss standard of auditing, or in German Prüfungsstandard, but it's quite similar to the international standard of auditing. The administration itself applies the IPSAS standards, or as well, at least in parts. All those rules are condensed in the Public Finance Act of the Canton of Bern, and we check or we audit on the application of those acts. Next slide, please. The internal audit part, I just only want to express that we also have the internal profession practice framework, the IPPF framework. We use that as a guideline, but we also have to use our own act, the Internal Auditor Act of the Canton of Bern, as another guideline. Next slide, please. As told before, the independency of our Court of Audit is actually key. That is not always easy. We are all employees of the administration of the Canton of Bern. We get our wage from the Canton of Bern. So you might ask, how can they be really independent? We feel that we are more independent than a private audit firm, which is quite dependent on the fees they get from their clients. We don't depend on these fees, and we have our own budget. We report not only to the government, but to the oversight committees and to the parliament. This is one of the key points that we can be as independent as possible. Switzerland, and this is, I think, quite important, has a long tradition and a long history of democracy, as well as of good checks and balances. So the government is not in front or up to the parliament. They are on the same level, as well as the justice, and this helps also for the Court of Audit to be and to keep their independency. Our system is usually, I would say, not much questioned. In parts that might be other, as Thomas said before, the bearer of the bad news is always on the focus. That's no doubt. But usually the institution itself is not questioned, and this helps us a lot. What do we expect from our own employees? Of course, they have to be educated well. They usually need some degrees of university or something similar, and this, I think, is just one of the preconditions. We need as well a good and a professional skepticism. We shouldn't believe everything our clients, our customers do answer to our questions. We have to go deeper, and we don't have to be put to sleep with some stories they told us all the time. They should also be curious, of course. They need some instinct, and at the end of the day, of course, we need a good planning of our audits, so we know our customers and their business, so we see the right questions to ask them. Next slide, please. Some other requirements or tools we use. As a former employee of PwC, we always used statistical methods to apply for the testing, and we do that as well here, but we don't overestimate those figures we get out of them. We set our focus better on the testing itself than on statistical methods to see how much testing we should do. So we have also some tools we apply. Data analysis, of course, with ACL or with our SAP, we also use the inbuilt SAP tools or Excel, of course. This you can imagine with all this data we get, there is still huge potential to get some better testing with big data, and this is a daily part of our business to get better on that, but we haven't reached the optimum so far. Next slide, please. On the lower part of this slide, you see our audit tools. You don't have to see everything there. Of course, this tool it supports us on planning as well as on the following up of our findings. But on the first part, we use the systems as a storage system for all our supporting documents out of the audit. And of course, our reports, the final reports and the management letters are also stored there in a systematic way. Again, there is no doubt for us more potential to increase the efficiency by using more digital processes also on our way we do our audits. Next slide, please. Well, let's have a look to the internal controls in the Bern administration. The Financial Act framework or Act says that in all ministries and all departments, the so-called COSO framework should be applied. COSO stands for Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Tradeway Commissions, as you probably know on this, the common framework for a good internal control system. I don't know how it is in your country, but this COSO framework is very well in theory and it should be applied as far as possible, but at the end of the day, it's still the theory. In fact, the application of this COSO framework is not always as it should be. Often only isolated details are covered by the specific internal control system when you look close. And unfortunately, the risky parts are not always covered enough. A point we have almost all the time, the documentation of the internal controls should be improved. It's not as good as we expect. Next slide, please. Digital processes, I also already mentioned, they cover many parts of the administration. And in our opinion, we have much too many systems running, systems which are connected to the network and bear risks to expose to threats. Computer controls are so, of course, more and more important. As well as already said, those controls, for example, in change management or access management processes should be better documented. A huge challenge with all these systems, connected systems, is the data security. The administration, the ICT departments often test internally the single components of the data security, but it lacks of an aggregated level of testing. So the Court of Auditor of Canton of Bern has started a program to test all those parts over a certain time period. We hope to finish this program in the next 3 to 4 years. So we have an oversight of all or of the most important parts of the data security and where it lacks of sustainable and sufficient controls. Some more challenges are the upcoming change to the cloud, like software as a platform or service, or platform as a software as a service or platform as a service. Questions with this, of course, who is responsible for the data? How can we audit that? Because sometimes this is far away, the servers are far away. Where can the servers be? Can they be in the US or in overseas or only in Switzerland? Is there a report from an external auditor of the cloud provider? And is this report enough? Can we rely on? And so on and so on. Next slide, please. How are we audited? As already mentioned, we have the Financial Oversight Authority, which is our oversight body. We collaborate also with the Swiss and other cantonal courts, but more in an institutional way. Joint audits are rather seldom, but can make sense in certain topics which are interesting by more than the administration of the Canton of Bern. We report and present our findings, our material findings, to the government of the Canton of Bern and as well to the oversight committees. Less material findings and reports only go to the leaders of the single departments. Next slide, please. The Court of Auditors in the Canton of Bern is subject or is supervised by the Swiss Federal Audit Oversight Authority, like the Big Four and other private audit firms. This supervision stands as well for the firm, for the Swiss Court of, or for the Bern Court of Auditors, as well as for the leading auditors of our Court of Auditors. We have to stand in good reputation, and unless that we lose our accreditation. Next slide, please. The Court of Auditors Act, paragraph or Article 7 says that we have to be audited by an external audit company. This is in the last couple of years the BDO network. I assume this is well known as well in your country. Beside the Big Four, it is in Switzerland the biggest audit firm. They do, as already mentioned, some file reviews as well as firm reviews. On the firm review, they check if we are educated as it should be, and as we have the right standards in place to like own internal control systems. Then they do assess our financial statements as well. We have a budget of about 3 or 4 million Swiss francs. Now, on the next couple of slides, I have some specific audits we had in the last couple of years, so you can imagine how we work or what we see on our work on our audits. First, it's an actual example, COVID-19. It's of course a normal economical impact beside the sanitizing impact we have, or medicine impact we have with COVID-19. Switzerland or the Swiss government had about 40 billion Swiss francs for private firms to cover this crisis. And the most of this 40 billions are covered by loans. They go via the Swiss private banks. And you can imagine that this is also a huge risk that money distributed goes to firms or to actors, to institutions which are not entitled for. So the Swiss Federal Court of Auditors has implemented some controls together as well with the Cantonal Court of Auditors as well as with some private audit firms. So we try to check all the firms who apply for such a loan if they are entitled or not. Next slide, please. Switzerland is on the corruption index only on rank 4. This is an index or a ranking of Transparency International. This is quite good as well, but Switzerland is not a paradise. So there are, we are sure, some fraudulent lendings. There are also some detected. Probably there will be any more occur in the next couple of months or years. Time then will show if our instrument, together with the Swiss Court of Auditors and the private audit firms, are effective by detecting these fraudulent events. We are sure we can prevent a lot, but not everything. The price of this, I would say, quite uncomplicated systems of lending money during the crisis, there will be a price to be paid for this reaction. But probably, or hopefully, and with our support, is this price not too high? So the next two slides we can skip as the time is already going quite fast. Let's go to the slide with number 10, performance audit. Again, skipping this one. And again, skipping. This is a real example of an audit we did in a couple of years ago. We audited the biggest or one of the biggest hospital in Switzerland. Without going in detail now, we can say that we uncovered some incorrect financial flows of about 6 million Swiss francs. 6 million Swiss francs is even to the dollar or even to the euro. So it means $6 million or 6 million euros. What was happened? The Department of Hospital of the Bern administration contributed to the hospitals of the Canton of Bern for trainings and education of their doctors. The Bern Court of Auditors uncovered that a huge part of those contributions were not entitled. Because of what it wasn't it entitled? Because the doctors actually didn't work for this specific hospitals who were contributed with the funds. So they had to pay back $6 million. And if the Court of Auditors wouldn't have the right to audit these subsidies, nobody would have done that, and the funding and contribution would go further and further. Let's go to the next slides. This is a well-known case in Switzerland, joint case of different court of auditors in Switzerland. We have very well-developed public transportation systems. The public transportation is not usually not directly covered by the administration, but by subsidiaries of the administration. The public transportation system is quite expensive because of this development of the transportation. It's expensive for users as well as for the taxpayers. The Swiss federal government, as well as the cantonal government and regional government, pay for the service of these transportation companies. The contribution to those companies holds uncovered costs, and we then, and let's go to the next slide. The Swiss Federal Court of Auditors, as well as the Bern Court of Auditors and other Court of Auditors, detected that the incentive systems of the funding of the public transportation was wrong. This led to creative accounting by public transportation companies, so they get more money from the administrations. We speak here about 100 million of Swiss francs who had to be paid back by some public transportation companies. And a last part, or a last audit I want to present is on the next slide. On this case, the government sold public property to a city, as well, public city. Then the question was, who is responsible for this land sale? Is it the government or is it the parliament? And factors for that is the value of the land. Is it a small part of land, then government can sell this land? Is it a huge part, then the parliament has the last say to this. Now, the value of the property depends on the location, on the development of the land, and on the valuation, who is carried out or isn't carried out, who has carried out the valuation, and so on and so forth. Now, what we had found out is that the land price was much too low. So the government was on the first side the part who could decide to sell this land. But actually the price of this land on the judgment of us, of the Finanzkontrolle or the Court of Auditors, the price was much too low. Actually, it was until 10 times higher than what it was sold. So the sale decision by government was wrong, actually. The parliament had no say, but it should have the last decision. So the consequences that there was a huge risk of loss of public asset, actually, and as well as a loss of confidence and a loss of reputation. And we had clearly a conflict of interest in this case. So let's go to the key performance indicators on my last slide. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, this slide I already was on. I already told you about that. Sorry about that. Key performance indicators. We are also measured, of course, by our oversight committee, and there are some of the KPIs. Of course, how many audits we had done every year, which follows on the activity reports we do every year. Then on the material findings, we classify our findings in high, middle, or small materiality. Then, of course, headcount is one factor, and the costs of our examinations. We do about 20 of our around 120 audits surveys of customer satisfaction. Of course, this is not our main goal to satisfy our clients or our customers, but we should have we should stand in good reputation with them as well. Our most important tool is we have an impact measurement system. We try to quantify our findings in measured in Swiss francs, and we do as well impact measurements in quality findings. And of course, there is always some subject how to measure that, but we find, and our oversight committee find it as well, that it is a quite good measurement instrument. Now, Thomas comes back again with some last information about our Court of Auditors. Please, Thomas.
Thank you. Before we come to the end of the presentation, a short word about the whistleblowing. We have since 2014 have a service of whistleblowing joined to the Court of Auditors. This is led by my deputy and myself. The collaboration people in our canton, they can announce some errors to this whistleblowing service. Of course, they should, it's recommended to go at first to the management and to solve the problem. But if the management is a part of the problem, they can come to us, or if they have risks to lose their job, so they can announce the problems and the errors they found, or they think there are problems to our services. Investigations are done by the Court of the Auditors then. Of course, the whistleblower's data remains anonymous. The great wall between the Office of Whistleblowing and the auditor is therefore essential. The next slide. The most important point is the anonymity, as I told already, of the whistleblower. The law cannot guarantee anonymity, but it gives security and protects the whistleblower, for example, for losing his job. Whistleblowing is just a further control of the whole system, and it helps us to find some risk where we wouldn't find them otherwise. So this was our short presentation. I hope it was for you fine. And if you have some questions, I give back now the speech to Arman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark and Thomas. Thank you for very interesting presentations and very rich. So I would like just to pass the floor to Lucina Grigorian, who has extensive experience in public and private auditing and coming from the large international auditing network to moderate this equality question and answer session. And then I will pass the floor to our Lerka Kankovic, who is the newly elected chair of the executive committee of the IACOP, for closing remarks. Lerka also is a senior advisor at the Ministry of Finance of Croatia. So, Lucina, the floor is yours. I know there are many questions coming.
Yes, thank you, Arman. Dear Thomas, dear Mark, thank you for the excellent presentation and for sharing very much interesting insights on the Swiss experience. Now we will open up the floor for question and answer. So, dear participants, if you have a question and you want to speak, you need to first push the request to speak button at the bottom of right corner of your screen, and then ask your question. In the meanwhile, as Arman mentioned, we have received a number of questions from our participants. So, without any further ado, I will read set of questions. The first set of questions are coming from Tomislav Micetic, representing Croatia. So the questions there are 4 questions, very short, so I'll read and will give time to you to answer. So the question first is, what is the level of staff competencies in the areas of internal audit and internal control, level of political appointment versus professional offering for public administration heads? The second question, how do you assess internal audit, internal control effectiveness in the external audit, and how you report to the parliament or public on the findings? The third question, what is the level of reliance, cooperation, and trust between internal audit and external audit? And the last 4th question, what is the level of implementation of quality management standards in the Swiss public administration? And do you take this into consideration when auditing these public administration bodies? Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Lucina. I try to answer them. I think some of the questions we already covered in our presentation, but let's see. The level of competences in areas of internal audit, internal control. I go to the political appointment Tomislav spoke from. I think this is in Switzerland not really important, the political appointment. So professional and educational, how you are educated and how degrees you have has much more importance than any political appointment. It doesn't change when the government changes the internal or the audit. The auditors do not change. They are not appointed by politicians, actually. So the competences are more on the professional and educational level to search for. How do we report to the parliament, public? We covered, I think, already on our presentation. So what's the level of reliance, cooperation and trust between internal and external audit? As we told in our presentation, we are both actually, the internal audit as well as the external audit. So we try or we trust ourselves, of course. The single departments, they do have some internal audit as well, which is not covered by ourselves. It's called inspection. For example, in the tax department, they have internal inspection, which is a kind of internal audit. We work together, but we assess how they work, how they do their internal audit, and then we assess if we can rely on or not. There is a cooperation, but it has his red line actually. Quality standards or quality management standards. I think this speaks from the ISO quality standards in the 90s of the last century. All these ISO standards would have been more standards, but in the last couple of years they are less important and less importance for us. We don't use them much, or we cannot rely on them much, because they do not cover actually the controls. They just are on the process level, and this is for us not enough. It's more for the quality of the work they do, but not as specific for the figures of the financial statements and so on.
Okay, thank you. Dear participants, alternatively, you can type your questions in the messaging box. Please use the participants tab. Thank you. So the next set of questions are coming from Tatiana Traikovska, representing the Republic of North Macedonia. There are 3 questions. I will read them in a row. So the first question is, what is your experience in conducting online audits? The next question, how the quality of internal audit is ensured, whether there is a system of supervision, insight into the work of internal auditors. The third question, how do you evaluate how the audit would add value to the institution after the virus crisis? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. During the crisis, we conducted all of our audits actually online. This works surprisingly or not surprisingly, I don't know. It works quite well. We got all the material online, and the network, that was key, that the network works as it should, and it should actually quite well. And we got all the stuff we needed, and we could do our work from home office sometimes, or from our office here in Bern. This was good. How the quality of the internal audit is ensured, probably I answered already before. Just about the system of supervision, we don't have a specific system of supervision. As told on the presentation, we do our internal audits in the departments during the year, 70 single audits, and this works quite well to get enough knowledge to assess the internal controls in the departments. Evaluating how the audit would add value to the institution after the virus crisis. Now, as we know, we can do online audits. Online audits are probably easier to conduct. The employees of the departments are less are less can work during our audit. So we will maybe do online audits in the near future to get more value out of our time and resources set on the audit. This might be some value added out of this crisis.
Thank you. I see that Lerka Krankovic from Croatia has a question or questions. So Lerka, please.
Hello to everybody. I would like to ask 3 questions, although you have mentioned a lot of things in your presentation, but maybe I do not understand correctly. First one is you have internal and external auditors. Are all of the auditors performing internal, could all auditors performing internal and external audit, and are all of them located in the premises of the Court of Auditors of the Canton of Bern, or some of them are maybe in the administration, in some ministries? This is one question. The second one is you are performing a performance auditing. I am very interested according to which methodology do you perform these tasks. And the third one is the question is about impact of measurement of your audit findings. You mentioned that this is a key performance indicator for you. But I'm not sure if I understood correctly, if you are reporting on specific findings in reports to the government, or you report, you sum up all the impacts of major findings from internal audit and external audit, and report this sum to the government. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm starting with the last question. The reportings are going just to the control department and the responsible ministry from this department. So first of all, we have our audit, then we have a project of the report, then we discussed the report with the control department and the collaborator from this ministry, and then we finalized this report. And we sent the report to the controlled departments and to the ministry. And only the material findings, that's not a lot, we are reporting directly to the government, to the 7-person, and to the finance committee and control committee. And to this board, I'm going every quarterly. I going and present them this material findings. And also they have the possibility, they get a list, a reporting of this quarter, of these 3 months, and they have the possibility to ask all other reports we have done during this period and ask me some questions. And also it's often the case then the finance committee or control committee, this politic committees will go deeper and making their own audits in this part. For the auditor, we are one service, the Court of the Canton of Bern, the auditors. Everybody is doing an internal audit, external audit. So we are one team, and the team are responsible for perhaps one department, one ministry, and every 5 to 7 years we are changing the ministry and the people. So we are, in this case, independent, but we have no people, they are working in the administration. It's possible that somebody is coming to us and he works before, and then of course of the independence we have to look that he can't doing an audit if he works before in the tax administration, he can't do audits in the finance ministry in this case. Then the performance, this question I give to Mark.
Yeah, performance audit, you ask about the methodology of our performance audit. Yeah, we do it as every audit. We plan and then we go through the audit and we do our reporting, and it depends what exactly you mean under performance audit. We do in our, so we see our performance audit. For example, this example in the presentation of the land sale. We take all the paperwork the administration has to that, and we do interviews. We interview the people involved in this land sale, up to the people from government, and then we check if the law is if it was respected, or as Thomas said, yeah, exactly. Maybe you understand something else under performance audit, then I should now, or you should give me some information what you understand under performance audit.
I think that you already answered the question, but maybe I should clarify. In the European Union, when we classify the audits, for example, financial audit and performance audit. Performance audit is more oriented to the impact of the program, of the project, and so on. But you already answered that you are looking in your audit at these aspects, not only financial data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you performance audit, in your word, is how effective something is. So we only do that when we audit a subsidy, an organization or institution who got some grants or some money for doing some tasks, public tasks. So then we check if, or we audit, or we try to audit if they use their money effective or not. But we don't audit in the departments. That's not our task. It's not in the Court of Auditors Act that we do that on the administration, as it might be in the European Union.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Lerga. Thank you, dear speakers. So we have more questions coming in the chat box, all in Russian in a way. So I will try to just translate. So the first question is regarding the courts. Does the Court of Auditors also performs audit in the courts? And maybe another question, and you will answer. So in this case, maybe it was not clear from the presentation. So the representative from the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation asks, it wasn't quite clear the difference between internal and external audit that the Court of Auditors is conducting. Can you please bring several examples of internal and external audits so the participants can more clearly understand the differences? Thank you.
Okay. So by the Court of Justice, we don't do performance audit. We are controlling their internal control systems. We are looking if their book accounting is keep fine, and we are looking if they get the money, the fees they should get for example, for experience or something like this. But it's not our work to look if the correctness of the judgment. On the other side, the difference between internal and external audit. Internal audit, I think it's clear, but we are also we are auditing the financial statement of the Canton of Bern, of all these departments, then the consolidation, and we give a report for this financial statements. And in the internal audits, of course, we are looking as well these financial statements. We are looking the process, the internal control systems, the effectiveness of this internal control systems, the other errors there happened, and the internal controls or audits are the basic for our financial statement. So we are we can do the work. We are starting at the end of January, and we have 1 month time to get our report for the financial statements. So we are basing on every of our internal audit reports. There we are doing both internal audit, and we cover all the risk as well for the financial statements. So with our planning of the audit, we are thinking always about the internal audit, and in behind of our head, we are thinking the risks for the financial audit. So there we have an effective work, and I think for us it's a good thing that we can do both internal and external audit. But on the other hand, we have also an auditor, as Mark told you, BDO. They will looking for our work as well for the external audit. They have to confirm, and as well how we do the internal audit. And this quality report they do every year, and the reporting is going to the financial committee and the government. So we are auditing each year from this department or from this external auditor. May I answer your question, or this was another question as well? Okay.
I think yes.
Thank you.
I think yes. So we have another set of questions from Svilena Simeonova from Bulgaria. So the questions, there are 3 questions, so I will read them at once. Do you analyze and assess the internal control system in every audit engagement? What kind of audit, financial, compliance, or performance includes more often an assessment of internal control systems? How do you elaborate the criteria for the assessment? And could you give an example of recommendations related to the internal control system of the internal audit function? Thank you.
I start with answering. An example for what we do recommend for internal controls, that might be that they should document it much better. Each control which is not documented, of course, isn't qualifying for as a good test. So we recommend to document an internal control system as it should be in the COSO framework. Then, as I told on the presentation, in the general computer control sector, there are always some lacks where we recommend to fill them. For example, in the change management or access management, there are too many people who have access to system who shouldn't use this access. So we recommend to close all this access to reduce the risk that anybody who isn't entitled to get in a system has access to this system. What was the first part of the question again, maybe?
Do you analyze and assess the internal control system in every audit engagement? What kind of audit, financial, compliance, or performance includes more often an assessment of internal control system?
Okay, as we told, performance audit we do not usually assess. I would say compliance audit and audit of the financial statement are more or less on the same. We at the year-end audit, this is external audit. We rely on many internal controls, so we need to assess this before during the audits of the single departments, and of course compliance is almost always a question of internal controls. So it's more or less on the same level, I would say. Thomas, you think this is correct?
I think this is correct. I think as well we are auditing for each audit we are doing. We are looking for the internal control system as well. If we audit a department, we don't look for every process, but we choose some process, and then we are looking as well for the function of this internal control system. But sometimes the problem is not the internal control system. I think you have the same experience. If you have a very important transactions, sometimes the decision is made by overwriting, by a management overwriting or overwrite by management. So the system is just not function for the very important transaction. And so that's the problem sometimes if the ministry is deciding something and a part of all the internal control system. So we are looking with our eyes for everything. And so, I mean, online audit, it was better than nothing. But for the future, if we can go, we are a small state in the Canton of Bern. We are almost all together in the same town. And so it's better if we go to the clients and we can talk to them. And sometimes you hear a more important thing in the coffee room than if you are looking on the screen. So the most important thing you are hearing from the people, they shouldn't tell it to you, but these are the interesting things besides the internal control system. Thank you.
Okay, and what about giving some examples or recommendations related to the internal control system of the internal audit function? A few, if you.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be. How could it be? Yeah.
Yeah, as I told before, when, for example, there are too many accesses for a system, let's say for the SAP system administration access rights, then we recommend close all these access rights. And if a control is not documented, then it should be documented in the future, and that helps in this part. Or when we go to this management override, we recommend that it should clearly or be clarified who is responsible, and all these people should then be involved in this decision. What prevents at least a little bit management override, not in the whole, but at least on the base.
Mm-hmm. Separation of function is always a fact, and the conflict of interest as well, as we constant in the audits, and so they won't see this problem sometimes because they are too close to see that this is not possible. This is a risk for the reputation then as well for the state.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question is coming from Raisa from Moldova. So the question is, would you please tell how the internal audit system is set up in the local self-governing bodies, at the level of local self-governing bodies?
We didn't understand the question. What is a local
self-governing bodies? what that means, a local self-governing. Is this I mean, we have a city of Bern, then we have the Canton of Bern, and we have the federal state. Is it the city which is meant by a local self-governing body, or what that means? If it's this,
sorry. As I understand the question, it refers to: do you have internal audit levels at the city, self-governing city levels? Do you have an internal audit system there or not?
It depends. Small entities, they don't have, for sure. But like the city of Bern, with 150,000 inhabitants, they do have an internal audit. As like in the Canton of Bern, it's of course a little bit smaller. They may have 5 employees who do all the work, but they at least have an internal audit. But smaller ones, they don't have the resources, they don't have the money to do that. And they rely actually on the external audit to do some internal audit part, maybe. But that's on smaller entities, it's probably also not that much money on the road, so the risk is smaller.
But the external audit is done as well for communes, for the small communes. Everybody has an auditor. Most of the time, that's our private person from the village, from the town. They are looking for this audit, and they're doing as well a little bit internal audit. And they can ask for a professional if they give the money out for this. And so at the end, all the financial statement has to be approved by the canton as well. And so the commune cannot do as they will. So if they have no money or the financial statement isn't correct, they are on the they become a commission who are looking for them.
Okay, so as a follow-up question, and do you have an internal audit function at the federal level?
Yes, they have a court on the federal as well. They are bigger than we, and they are spending more money than me, and so we are working together with them. So we have a cooperation between the federal court and the 26 canton court and the biggest city. And so we have 2 organizations, one for the German-speaking part and one for the French and the Italian-speaking part. And all together, we have a confederation for all. And so we have every year several meetings and as well Ausbildung, formation, education, and we do as well audits together. For example, in the public transportation or for the university, because they are financed by the confederation and as well by the canton and by the communities. And so we are doing this audit sometimes together. As well, the tax is together for the canton. We are doing the job with the communes, and the part for the confederation, we also cash take in. Also, we are doing the job as well in the tax payment for the confederation. So we have to work together as well in this part.
And what I can say, the Swiss Federal Court of Audit has a very good reputation. They publish every report to the public, actually, and news papers report about their reporting, and that's something we cannot do. Our act, the Court of Auditors Act of the Canton of Bern, does not allow to publish the reports. On the federal level, they can publish, and they do publishing all reports, and it's in the public. It's important when they publish any reports, then newsletters or newspapers, they report about that.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is coming from Manfred van Kesteren, our partner from Dutch Academy. And so the question is, can you tell how you compose your annual audit planning? How does your planning process work? Do you also do audits on request of management departments? Thank you. Please.
Okay, thank you. So we have in our system, we have all the audits we have done, and we have also a plan how which department we will plan for the next. And in summer, after summer, in August, we are starting our planning for the next year. And so we are looking which department in which ministry we have to do. We have which risks and how we will do the audits, and then we have our resources of the staff, and so we are doing the planning after the risk with the resources we have, and we are planning all the next year. So everybody, the 24 person, they know which audit they are on, when they happens. And when we have the plan, first of all, we are discussing this planning with the ministries and with the Committee of Finance. And we ask them if they have other questions or demands. And if they have, often they have some or two, then we take them place. So we do an audit planning from ourselves on the next year, and we are the demand of the ministry we take, because sometimes it's a change or a new system, or a person he is leaving the canton, so we check if everything is all right. So we take care of this demands as well, and at the end of the year, this planning is fixed, and so we fix the time, the date, and we go on. And then we have a crisis like Corona, so we change everything, and we are flexible. We are not fixed on the plan, so we are fixed on the need that we have to do now. That's the way we are planning our audit, and the next year in summer it's starting again. And if we find a risk during the audit, or we have not the opportunity, or we get an announcement of the whistleblowing, we note this for the next year. Sometimes we have to go immediately, and sometimes it's early enough if we go to check this in the next year. So it's about the process.
Great.
And it's true, management as well can ask for an audit. This sometimes happens, not too often, but sometimes it happens. Usually we do our planning by ourselves, and the oversight committee do some special or wishes some special audits, or management sometimes wishes some special audits. And management means the management of the administration or the government itself.
Thank you. Another set of questions. So there are two questions. In your presentation, you mentioned that the Court of Auditors also conducts consulting engagement for executives and legislative bodies. Please elaborate on the most frequent type of engagements, and to what extent the number of consulting engagements have been impacted during the COVID-19 times, considering that the executives will need that consulting more now. And the next question, is there a federal or cantonal training or certification program, or you apply the international one? Thank you.
Usually we cannot do consulting very much or very deep. We can consult in our recommendation in a way where we have findings which they should solve, but in the deeper way they have to look by themselves, because when we do too much consulting, then next time we audit our own work, and that is something who cannot happen or shouldn't happen. So we have a very small extent of consulting to the administration or to the government. And this is the same in the normal way as well as during the COVID-19 crisis. Training or certification program, your second question. Our people, our employees, they are well educated before. They usually are certified auditors or on the way to do their certification. So we support them on this certification program. Some are external auditors, and from their education, some internal. We have both, but they do then the same in our Court of Auditor. Of course, we have, together with the Swiss Federal Court of Auditors, an internal training program, usually in January. First part of January, they do their training, and then we have individual courses who are visited by our employees. We encourage our employees to do enough education, and the Federal Audit Committee or the Oversight Board, actually, they give some clarification how much education we should enjoy each year as a minimum. This is about 6 or 7 days each year we should be on education. So we do that, and sometimes we do more, usually at least this 6 or 7 days each year.
Thank you. Dear Thomas Schoffer from SECO, do you have a question? Because you requested to speak.
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to help with the local self-governing bodies, but I think now everything is clear. So please go on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, we are getting more questions. The next one is coming from Tiago Henrique. Tiago is from Brazil, state of Paraíba, city of João Pessoa. His question is on data security. So the question is, how do you plan the periodic verifications of the state of security of data, and which mechanisms are used?
Yeah, this is data security auditing is very specific auditing, as you know. We have 1 or 2 ICT auditors with us, but we also do data security audit together with external specialists, because as you know, data prevention, disaster recovery, and so on, this is very deeply going in what you need to know, and we cannot do that by ourselves. So, as I told in the presentation, we had this new 4-year program together with an external firm, with an external private firm, and we do this together with them. And without this specific support, we couldn't do that by ourselves, actually, or not yet.
Okay, thank you. Another question is coming from Ruslana Rudnitska, again, our partner and expert from Dutch Academy. So the question is, would you be so kind to elaborate more on your whistleblower system? How do you use this information, rely on it and check it? How it works, in a word.
Okay, thank you very much. We are a small canton, and so we don't need a big system. So we usually the people are give us a phone and they announce what they have to tell us, and then we are making up a meeting together. So you meet us in our rooms. That's my deputy and me and the person who like to announce something, and we explain the person how it works. And we give them as well the chance afterwards. He have told us everything who is happening and what was wrong. He has always the chance to stop it. So he can say, oh no, it's too much risk for me. I won't, I will like to go back and you have nothing from me, no news. So we give them the opportunity after the meeting to stop it. If no, we are starting our audit or analysis, because so we have, at first of all, we get some information at the phone. Then we can check if it's a collaboration, if it's an employee or not, because only the employee can announce us the error or mistakes. All the inhabitants, the other 1 million people, he can't come to the whistleblowing. And so we are looking, yes, he is working in the canton. Yes, we are analyzing this. Something could be wrong. Yes, it could be that he can know the system or the error. And if we get all the information, we have no more relation between the whistleblower and us. He gives us one time, perhaps afterwards by mail, he sent us some further documents, and then we stop. And then we are looking if it's something on a risk or something could be wrong, or perhaps it's something against the person. It's something not for us. It's for the service of the staff who should care of this problem, and not the audit committee. And so if we are thinking, yes, there is a risk, and it is something financial, it's something about reputation, so we take care of this, and we take this in the planning of the audit. And if it's a risk, he should be audited immediately. For example, somebody is picking cash, so we have to go immediately. But if it's a problem of a process, so we look when is the next possibility to make an audit. If we have in autumn already an audit, we are looking then, and we have not, perhaps we go in spring. So we are doing the audit. The auditors don't know which person has announced something. They know only we have to audit a risk, and the risk could be in the process, or the risk could be a person. And so we are doing our audit. Nobody knows that we are coming for looking in addition for a whistleblowing subject. And so we are doing our job. And at the end, we get a report. And often nobody knows that the subject for the audit was a whistleblower. And so we can do the separation between audit and whistleblowing. So just me and my deputy, they know the name of this person, and all the other, they have to care only about the risk. And sometimes it could be before the audit, if it's urgent, we go to the management of this department and we tell them, you have a problem. Somebody perhaps is buying something, and a conflict of interest, and then we have to do the audit together and immediately. But the name is anonymous.
That's the explication, if it's enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
But in one thing might be interesting, and it might once change. But in the act of whistleblowing, which we have in Bern, the anonymity is not, as Thomas told you, against him and his deputy. There are some whistleblowing services who have fully anonymity. So somebody can go over a secured online formula without calling his name and doing the whistleblowing. In Bern, we decided, or the parliament decided, to that the whistleblower has to say his name against the whistleblowing service. This might be interesting for some of you.
Okay, and maybe the final question, a short question coming again from participants. This is in Russian, I will translate. What is your experience with risk analysis or risk-oriented approach? If you can share very shortly.
We do a risk-orientated approach, of course. We go to the departments where the risk is higher more than one time. Every year we look on the higher risk sectors of those departments rather than on some very normal sectors of this specific department. So we do during our planning a risk assessment by ourselves. As I told, we need to know our customers, we need to know the departments, we need to know the systems, we need to know what they do actually. And of course, there is another aspect, risk assessment. We expect that the departments or the ministries do their own risk assessment. It's an important part of internal control system as well. This is the first level of defense, as Thomas told you. If they do not know their risk, they have implemented wrong controls or no controls. Unfortunately, this is still common. They do some alibi risk assessment, which doesn't help very much, of course. And then we ask them, or we that they implement optimized risk assessment, which really is effective and not only an alibi.
Okay, thank you, dear speakers. Thank you very much for answering all the questions so comprehensively. I think our participants are delighted with your answers. However, dear participants, if you have any burning questions that you couldn't anyway reach those to us, you can write those to Christina, and we'll try to coordinate with our speakers and get the answers. Thank you again very much. And now I am passing the floor to Lerga Krenkovic, our IACOP ExCom Executive Committee Chair, for providing closing remarks. So Lerga, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Louisine. Dear internal audit community of practice members, dear observers, dear guests. We are now at the end of this very interesting and much interactive virtual event. The PEMPAL representatives of the budget, treasury and internal audit community of practice had the opportunity almost a decade ago to visit Bern and to learn from the Swiss experience on audit and internal control system on the spot. Today's event is a continuation of this successful networking and recapping on the progress made during last decade, although it was unfortunately not possible to have face-to-face meeting. We appreciate the effort that our Swiss colleagues put into preparation and organizing of this event on the Swiss approach to the internal audit and internal control system framework with a focus on the Canton of Bern. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Swiss colleagues for delivering the presentation and participating in the very fruitful question and answer questions at the end of the event. Maybe I can say Dankeschön. We enjoyed listening to thorough presentations of your experience and insights on public sector audit and internal control framework. We are now acquainted with your cantonal, federal, cantonal and town structures, your internal control system and control of auditors of Canton of Bern that covers both internal and external audits. We received a lot of information on various aspects of internal and external audit, on the standards applied, 3 lines of defense model, audit tools and techniques, performed practical examples, then information on COVID crisis and risks for auditors, also on key performance indicators, on external quality assessment of public sector audit activity, etc. All of these topics are of the highest interest for us as members of the internal audit community of practice, and we can now contrast our experience with lessons learned from the Swiss counterparts. To summarize, as you said, Swiss legal framework for external and internal audit differs from the legal framework in majority, if not all, of PEMPAL countries, where the role of the Supreme Audit Institution is separated from the role of the internal audit function in the public sector organization, as you mentioned. However, the audit requirements for internal audit, as well as internal audit techniques and tools, are the same and differ only taking into account the maturity level of the audit activities. This event, I think, proved once again that all internal audit professionals are, doesn't matter where they are located, faced with the same problems and challenges. Dear Mr. Thomas and dear Mr. Mark, you helped us to gain a better understanding of how the whole system of controls operates in your country. I, as much as anyone, realized that still have a lot to learn, especially on data analysis and digital processes, digital storage of internal audit products. But even you have also mentioned that you have not reached your optimum in this field. I believe that this event will add value to our overall network future activities. Dear colleagues, the material from this event is available on the PEMPAL website. The internal audit community of practice members will also share presentation among colleagues and in their respective countries. And according to our practice, we will be sending out an email survey about satisfaction with this event. I would kindly ask you to respond to this survey. In the end, I would like to thank again to the Swiss Secretariat for Economic Affairs, the World Bank, and the PEMPAL Secretariat for preparation and organization of this virtual event, for the large work they have put into this event. A big thank you goes, as always, to our interpreters for their dedicated and professional translation. Thank you all, dear colleagues, for your active participation in this event. I wish all of you a very good evening. I hope to see you during our next smart interactive talk, potentially after the summer break, and hopefully next year in Bern. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye all. Thank you again. Thank you everybody for joining.